Hare Hare. So we're continuing, slowly, progressing through the key verses. So we're still in chapter 4, text 13. Chaturvarnya maya ashrishnam guna karma vibhagasha tasya kataramapimam vidya kataramayayam. According to the three modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the four divisions of human society are created by me, Krishna says. And although I am the creator of the system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. So in the last video, we recognize that the Varnashram program is all about responsibility. Who is responsible? And then because, or by recognizing who's responsible, then the individuals, society, everyone can be elevated. But it's really centered around responsibility. And responsibility is defined very, very specifically. Jaiva dharma, naimittika dharma. Jaiva dharma, just briefly to recap, Jaiva dharma is the dharma, the nature, the responsibility of this jiva. Jivera Srupoi Krishnara Nityadas. In other words, coming closer to Krishna. Brief, I'm not going to go into a whole thing of Jaiva dharma. But briefly, that's what Jaiva dharma is. Coming closer to Krishna. So what are the responsibilities? What are the activities that make sure we come closer to Krishna? That's Jaiva dharma. Then there's naimittika dharma. Naimittika means that which is pertaining to the material body, or that which is temporary. The Varnashram structure itself is naimittika dharma. Varna and ashram. It's temporary. It's pertaining to the material body, whether you're male, female, Kshatriya, Brahmana, Vaisya, whatever. That's all pertaining to the psychophysical nature of the individual. That's temporary. Once the body dies, all the Varnashram designations go up in smoke. Temporary, naimittika. But there are obligations, there are responsibilities, there are things, activities that we must do in that naimittika dharma area. So that's the two areas of responsibility. So to be responsible means to ensure that I, for myself or for my subordinates, my subjects, they are properly situated, or I facilitate their ability to pursue or enact Jaiva dharma, to come closer to Krishna. I facilitate that. And I facilitate their, and my own, of course, their manifestation, the manifestation of their naimittika dharma, making sure they're properly situated in their varna and in their ashram so that they can continue to progress as well. And this is across all species of life. For human beings, it's a little easier, but for animals also. The responsible leader is to make sure that animals are living in such a manner that their Jaiva dharma, right? Their Jaiva dharma is also facilitated. That in whatever way the animal can be engaged in Krishna service, it is, even if it's just being protected so that they are not unnecessarily harmed. And also so that the bees can do what the bees do, pollinate the various crops. In other words, so to make sure all living entities are properly situated wherever they need to be so that they can progress either in the species of life or in their spiritual development. Responsibility, twofold, these two aspects. So now we know what responsibility is and how Varnashram defines responsibility. Now let's go into Varna and Ashram. Let's start with ashrams, because ashrams is a bit easier to understand and easier to pull apart. Forgive me. So we have the Brahmacharya, Grihasta, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas. Taking these two aspects of responsibility, Jaiva dharma and naimittika dharma, the Brahmacharya, the ashram of Brahmacharya is very simple. The person's a student. Their responsibility is very personal. They're responsible for their own, developing their own Jaiva dharma and engaging in their activities of the naimittika dharma as brahmacharis in the house of the spiritual master. But it's personal, individual. When they come to the Grihasta ashram, that is expanded. They are now responsible for the Jaiva dharma and naimittika dharma of their spouse and their children and their immediate family members. So it becomes outward. When they go on to Vanaprastha, it turns inward again. Unless the Vanaprastha takes Vanaprastha with their spouse, that may or may not happen. But it's still inward. Even if they go with their spouse, it's just the two of them anyway. It's inward. Their Jaiva Dharma and Naimittika Dharma, as it pertains to the Varnashram, Vanaprastha, is about themselves. How to facilitate their own development in Jaiva Dharma and fulfilling their obligations as a Vanaprastha, Naimittika Dharma. It's inward. When they go on to sannyas, when the individual goes on to sannyas, it becomes outward again. Of course, we know there are stages of sannyas, but essentially the sannyas ashram is once again, it's outward. How to facilitate other living entities, other human beings in society to progress according to Jaiva Dharma and their Naimittika Dharma. So that's easy to understand on the side of the ashrams. Brahmachari, Jaiva Dharma, Naimittika Dharma, focus on how do I develop on those two levels. When I become a Grihasta, now I'm focused on my family. Their Jaiva Dharma and Naimittika Dharma, make sure that's all facilitated for my immediate family. Vanaprastha, then it's about myself and my wife, using myself as an example. How do we facilitate our continued development in Jaiva Dharma, coming closer to Krishna, Naimittika Dharma. And then if I take sannyas, that's not going to happen. But then I would focus on facilitating and developing and empowering others in their Jaiva Dharma and Naimittika Dharma. Now let's turn to Varna. Varna is a little more, it's actually very simple, but it's not talked about in terms of Jaiva Dharma and Naimittika Dharma. That's the problem where we get a lot of confusion, a lot of, not confusion, I would say, just lack of understanding. Because oftentimes we hear, oh, is my Varna this, is my Varna that, is maybe I'm a Kshatriya or a Brahmana or this. And when I was when I was in Gurukula and Srila Prabhupada, and this is why Srila Prabhupada actually said the instruction is from Srila Prabhupada is that wherever there's an ISKCON center, there should be a Varnashram college to help people with this. So it's critically important. And when I was transferred to the Vrindavan Gurukula is where there was the first Varnashram college, at least for kids. And so I was transferred to the Varnashram college in Vrindavan, 11 years old. And I was put into the Varnashram program. Got it all wrong. But that's understandable. It's quite early. But that's where the confusion is. A lack of understanding, a lack of knowledge, not understanding. Once we know, it's very easy to understand. A lack of knowledge of what Varnashram is all about. Responsibility. Now, Varna. First thing we must clear up, and this is critically important. This is before we go into Varnas, let's talk specifically about Shudras. This is very, very important. And this is where really we begin to go off the deep end in terms of Varnashram. And I do this a lot. Whenever I talk about Varnashram, I give a seminar here or there. I've been doing this for years now. The first thing I do is I have this quiz. All the devotees are sitting in the time and they say, okay, I'm going to list some qualities and I want you all to answer whether it's a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaisya, and Sudra. So I list qualities without naming what I'm talking about. Say, cow protection, this or that. What is that? All the hands go, oh, it's a Vaisya. Then I list some qualities of the Kshatriya. Oh, it's a Kshatriya. Then I list qualities of a Shudra, but I take out one particular quality. Now, these qualities are listed all in the Bhagavatam, 7th canto. This is where I take these qualities from, described by Nard Muni. I take the qualities of a Shudra, and I subtract one, the quality of giving service to others, because that's a giveaway, right? So I remove that one quality, and the other 5 or 6 qualities I list. This is, what is it? What Varna am I talking about? All the hands go up. You're talking about a Brahmana. And when I tell people, when I reveal that actually no, those are the qualities of a Shudra, everyone is astounded. The qualities of a Shudra, if the world today were run by Shudras, we would be living in heaven on earth. Shudras are highly qualified people. Patience, determination, following the revealed scriptures. The qualities of a Shudra listed by Narad Muni are highly elevated people. This is something that is completely lost when we talk about Varnashram. We think Shudras are the dregs of society. Absolutely, if the world were run by Shudras, as defined by Narad Muni, we would be living in heaven on earth if our president was a Shudra. As described by Narad Muni. I'm not disparaging the current president. I'm just saying a person who is a qualified Shudra, as described by Narad Muni, the world would be in a much, much better place. Any human endeavor, business, government, if they were run by Shudras, the world would be transformed. Those are the qualifications of a Shudra. The nature of a Shudra, a qualified Shudra. That is very important to understand. Shudras are not the dregs of the society, people who are, walking around unemployed, homeless, or, lazy liars. No, these are not Shudras. That's very important to understand. Go to the 7th chapter where Narad Muni describes the quality of the Shudras, and you take out that one quality. It's amazing. You take out that one quality, service to others, and all the qualifications of the Shudra you cannot distinguish them from the qualifications of a Brahmana. Cannot distinguish them. That's how highly qualified Shudras are. Now, with that understanding, let's now delve into the various Varnas. Looking at this through the understanding that Varnashram is talking about responsibility. Jaiva Dharma, Naimittika Dharma. In the center, you have the Shudras. The Shudras, what defines a Shudra? Highly qualified personalities, as Narad Muni has described. Highly qualified people. Highly intelligent in every way. Highly qualified, impeccable personal character. But the definition, what defines a Shudra, so to speak, is their desire to take up responsibility. That's the difference. Shudras do not want to be responsible for anything other than themselves or their immediate family members. If they're married. If they're not married, they're not interested in being responsible for someone else's Jaiva Dharma and someone else's Naimittika Dharma. They are not interested. I'll come to work, give me my paycheck, I'm going home. I don't want to be responsible for anything else. Those are Shudras. It doesn't matter what the work, they can be, highly paid, they can be, they can be professors in a college. You can have a Shudra who is a professor in a college. They come to the college, they're highly intelligent, IQ through the roof, they're experts in their field, they excellent teachers in terms of relaying information and inspiring the kids to learn, students to learn. But really what they don't want to be responsible for what the students do with that knowledge. They don't want to be responsible for the well-being of their students in terms of Naimittika Dharma and Jaiva Dharma. They want to get their tenure, take their paycheck, and go home. So a Shudra can be in the profession of a Brahmana, but they come at it with a different mentality. They're not interested in the responsibility of Jaiva Dharma and Naimittika Dharma for the persons they are teaching. So a Shudra can be in a Brahminical profession. A Shudra can be in a Kshatriya profession. Many of the soldiers, and this is described in the Mahabharata, many of the soldiers, all of the soldiers on the battlefield of Kurukshetra were not Kshatriyas. That's not the way it works. They are soldiers who are there. They are inclined for military activity, but they're there, they get their paycheck, and they go home, so to speak. They were actually Shudras who were fighting, who had their allegiance to a particular kingdom or a particular king, and they fought accordingly, according to Kshatriya principles. Absolutely. That's the definition of a Shudra. They follow they serve the other ashramas according to the principles of those ashramas. So they serve the Brahminical profession, they serve the Kshatriya profession, they serve the Vaisya profession as employees. They are highly qualified. But that's how they get their paycheck, their salary. They go home and they do not want responsibility for the individual's jaiva dharma, naimittika dharma. They're only interested in their own individual jaiva dharma. Yes, Shudras are interested in their spiritual development. Sudras are not necessarily, not in the Varnasrama sense. They're not, atheists or, they're not demons. Shudras are not demons. Let's make that very, very clear. The misconception about Shudras, at least as we hear about it and talk about it in most ISKCON circles, is completely off in left field when we talk about Shudras. Shudras are not demons. They're highly qualified people. Please, let there be a Shudra running for president. That would transform the world if we had a Shudra running for president. The next level are Vaishyas. Vaishyas, the Shudras were in the center. The next circle are the Vaishyas. They are interested in being responsible for the jaiva dharma and the naimittika dharma of a larger group, their community. They're running businesses. They're employees in their business. They're interested not just in exploiting their employees to make a living, but they're actually genuinely want to be and are responsible, know that they are responsible for their employees' jaiva dharma, their spiritual well-being, as well as making sure they are properly paid, they have a living wage, and so on and so forth. They're naimittika dharmas. So a Vaishya is of the nature of the inclination of wanting to be responsible for a larger community of people, their village, their town, their larger, maybe their own personal, larger family members, right? Uncles, nieces, and however large their family is. The community, even. They want that, they are inclined to be responsible in that way. Kshatriyas, that circle expands even larger. Kshatriyas want to be, have the inclination to be responsible for the naimittika dharma and the jaiva dharma of the entire country, the entire city, and in every way possible. And as the areas of responsibility get larger and larger, then obviously the activities in order to be responsible change. If you want to rule the world and to facilitate so everyone can fulfill their naimittika dharma and can engage in a jaiva dharma, come closer to Krishna, you're going to have to be Parikshit Maharaj. There are going to be times when you're going to have to pull out a sword, when you're trying to be responsible for that large a group of people. When it's just ourselves in the family, we don't need domestic violence. That's not necessary. In a community, there may be requirements for some laws so that there's smooth running of the community. But when it gets to the scale of a Kshatriya level, then yes, there will be times where Sama, Dana, Veda, and Danda, when the Kshatriya has to go to war. So the activities change based on the Varna in terms of based on their individual's capacity for inclination towards taking up responsibility. The Brahmins is the broadest. They're interested in the well-being of all living creatures everywhere and all times. And this is why the definition of a Brahmana is simply this. They've realized Brahman. That's it. Their realization of Brahman has many symptoms. Patience, determination, all forgiveness, and all these wonderful symptoms of someone who has realized Brahman. But the qualifications of a Brahmana is they have realized Brahman. All these other wonderful side effects, if you will, of realizing Brahman, these things are qualities that Shudras also practice, Vaishyas practice, Kshatriyas practice, to varying degrees of success. They sometimes, oops, they don't always do so because they may not be realized in Brahman realization. They may not have Brahman realization. The definition of a Brahmana is that they are Brahman realized. And because they are Brahman realized, they are most capable of helping, teaching, showing, exemplifying what it means to live according to Jaiva Dharma. They're best able to instruct others in how to engage their lives, their Naimitika Dharma, so that they continue to progress in their spiritual development. So the Brahminical concept, they teach freely. That is why the Brahmanas run the education systems. That's the difference between a Brahmana professor and a Sudra professor. A Sudra professor knows all the information, highly intelligent, highly qualified, great teacher. They get their paycheck, they go home. A Brahmana says, no, we are not going to teach this type of knowledge because this type of knowledge is detrimental, or will not teach this type of knowledge to this type of person. Because if I give this type of knowledge to this type of person, there's going to be chaos. Brahmins are interested in what happens with the knowledge that they teach. And they give the knowledge freely. They're not interested in a paycheck. They're not interested in tenure. Brahmins are interested in what can I do to uplift everyone in their Jaiva Dharma, so they come closer to the Supreme, they come closer to Brahman realization at least, and so that their external situation, their Varna, their Namitika Dharma, their social situation, their personal situation, their financial situation, how can I guide them in that area so that they can spend the time and not be distracted by difficulties in that area, and they can spend their time towards, as much as possible, spiritual elevation. So Brahmins are, their desire for helping as many as possible is unlimited. They do not see the external. They're not limited by the external realities when they're trying to share. Right? The Shudra is only interested in my family. The Vaisya, my community. The Kshatriya, my country. Brahmana is, how can I help this individual, whatever species of life, how can I help this individual jiva come closer to the Supreme? How can I help this individual jiva be situated in the world so that they can come closer to the Supreme? Doesn't matter what this, whether it's a this or a that, what can I do to help this particular jiva? If this particular jiva is not qualified, then I can maybe help in this way. This is how the Brahmins were teachers. They did not indiscriminately teach unqualified persons, or they worked on teaching proper etiquette, raising the level of consciousness of the student to the point where they can learn and study and have Brahman realization. So this is how Varna is actually determined. So when we look ourselves in the mirror, think, am I Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaisya, and Sudra? Don't look at, do I like to teach? Do I like to plow? Do I like to practice law? You got it wrong. A Kshatriya can practice law, a Brahmana can practice law, a Vaisya can practice law, a Sudra can practice law. The activity is not the issue. The issue is, do you see yourself, do you want to take up the responsibility for others in terms of their Jaiva Dharma, coming closer to Krishna, and their Naimitika Dharma, how they're situated in the world, in their social reality? Do you want that responsibility? How much of that responsibility do you want? If you don't want that responsibility, you're a Shudra. Doesn't make you a demon, doesn't make you the dregs of society. Doesn't make you poor, doesn't make you homeless, doesn't make you an idiot. You're still as highly qualified as a Brahmana in terms of one's personality, qualifications, and character. It simply means you do not want to be responsibility for someone else's Jaiva Dharma and their Naimitika Dharma. That's it. That's how we understand Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaisya, and Sudra. We look at it in those terms. The activity is secondary. The activity is secondary. So I think we may have wrapped up this particular verse, chapter 4, text 13. There's not a whole much, we can really go delve into Varnashram, but this verse is really not about Varnashram. This verse is about how Krishna is above Varnashram, Daivi Varnashram. That's another level entirely. So the next verse after this is chapter 4, text 20, I believe. Karmanaiva hisam siddhim. Hare Krishna. Any questions? Just put them in the comments, and we'll continue to go on to chapter 4, text 20, and I'll just put other videos along the way if there's any questions about what we've talked about in terms of Varnasrama. I don't want to go too much into Varnasrama. It's a huge subject, and I'm not an expert. But if there are some questions or I said something that didn't make any sense, put a question in the comment section. I'll either answer it via text or I'll put another video to expand on it. But the next video we're going to go on to chapter 4, text 20. Hare Hare.